Welcome, thinker, seeker, and silent fighter of your own inner battles. You've stepped into a journey that doesn't promise perfection. It promises truth, clarity, and the power to rise above the noise inside your mind. This is UNF CK YOURSELF, brought to you by Assets Investor, and this experience is crafted for those who are ready to stop surrendering to the voice that limits them and start reclaiming the life they were meant to lead. Here, you won't be told who to become. Instead, you'll discover the freedom to decide for yourself. You'll uncover the chains you never realized you were carrying, confront the beliefs that shaped you without permission, and learn how to rebuild your inner world with intention, precision, and calm strength. This audiobook is an invitation to step into a version of you that has always existed beneath the weight of doubt, fear, and old narratives. As you move through these chapters, allow the words to meet you exactly where you are. No pressure, no performance. Just a deep, steady unfolding of the clarity and control you've been searching for. This is not about fixing yourself. It's about freeing yourself. Welcome to the beginning of an UNF life. One built from awareness, responsibility, and a power that's been yours all along. Let's begin. The silent war inside your mind. There is a battle you fight long before you take a single step in the outside world. It doesn't roar. It doesn't announce itself. It rarely feels dramatic. Yet it shapes everything you say, everything you avoid, everything you dare to attempt. This silent war unfolds in moments so small they almost go unnoticed. Moments when you hesitate, moments when you shrink, moments when the voice inside you feels louder than any reality around you. It begins early in life. A comment from someone you trusted, a mistake that embarrassed you, a failure you didn't know how to interpret. These experiences do not simply pass through you, they take root, and over years, they shape the lens through which you evaluate yourself. That lens becomes the first battleground, because although the outside world changes constantly, the beliefs you formed about yourself remain frozen, quiet, unquestioned, powerful. Consider the way you wake up on certain mornings feeling capable and clear-minded, and other mornings feeling heavy without explanation. The world outside didn't change overnight, but the internal dialogue did. And this is the essence of the silent war. It is not fought with visible weapons, but with interpretations, assumptions, and emotional reflexes that live just beneath conscious awareness. Think about the decisions you delay, not because they are impossible, but because they trigger old doubts. A chance to speak up during a meeting, applying for an opportunity you secretly want, ending a relationship that has quietly drained you for years. Outwardly, these choices appear simple. Internally, they stir fears of rejection, judgment, or inadequacy. You feel tension, but you cannot fully explain why. That's the war. It doesn't confront you directly, it nudges you away from your future, by making the present feel safer if you stay still. This war shows itself most clearly when you face growth. Growth is uncomfortable by nature. It pushes you into spaces where certainty is replaced by possibility. And possibility, while exciting, also exposes you to risk. Your mind begins to pull from its oldest archives, times you failed, times you disappointed yourself, times you didn't meet expectations. The mind presents these memories not as experiences but as evidence, like a quiet prosecutor arguing that you should stay exactly where you are. But here is the truth most people never realize. Your mind is not trying to harm you. It is trying to protect you. It remembers every wound, every embarrassment, every emotional cut you endured, and it interprets growth as danger because growth reminds it of uncertainty. This protective instinct becomes the foundation of the internal war. You want to expand, your mind wants to shield you. You want to evolve, your mind wants to preserve you. Imagine a person standing on the edge of a diving board. They know how water works. They know they can swim. They know countless others have jumped before. The threat is almost non-existent, yet their body tightens, their breathing quickens, their thoughts race. Nothing outside them changed. The pool didn't become deeper or more dangerous. The battle is entirely internal. Their mind is fighting against something that isn't actually happening, an imagined risk, magnified by memory and emotion. This happens in everyday life. A conversation you fear will go wrong, a goal you assume you'll fail at, a project you abandon because you imagine the criticism before it even arrives. You're not reacting to reality, you're reacting to the version of reality your mind has constructed from past pain. That's what makes the war so subtle and so powerful. Your thoughts feel factual even when they are only familiar. Across cultures, across countries, across generations, this internal conflict is universal. The student preparing to speak in front of a class in Brazil, the entrepreneur in Japan hesitating before sending a proposal, the young professional in the United States doubting their ability to ask for a better position. The details change, but the battle is the same. Humans are wired to fear psychological injury more than physical effort. We would rather stay small than risk being seen and misunderstood. And so, without realizing it, people often fight themselves more than they fight their circumstances. They negotiate with their fears instead of their goals. They surrender to the first wave of discomfort instead of exploring what lies beneath it. They interpret hesitation as truth instead of recognizing it as a signal shaped by old experiences. This war also influences the way you interpret other people. A neutral expression might feel like judgment. A delayed reply might feel like rejection. A simple challenge might feel like a personal attack. When the internal battle is active, you don't just doubt yourself, you doubt the intentions of the world around you. You assume danger where none exists. You sense criticism even when no one is speaking. The battlefield expands until everything feels sharper, heavier, more personal. Yet, perhaps the most defining element of this silent war is the way it reshapes your identity without your awareness. When you doubt yourself long enough, you stop calling it doubt, you start calling it personality. You begin saying things like, "I'm not confident," or "I'm not capable of leadership," or "I'm always anxious." You speak as if these traits are permanent fixtures instead of temporary mental states. The war wins when you confuse your patterns with your identity. But even in this quiet struggle, there is something crucial to understand. The war is not hopeless. In fact, its presence means something profoundly important. You only fight internal battles when there is potential inside you trying to emerge. The tension you feel is the pressure of your unrealized self pushing against outdated beliefs. The conflict is not a sign of weakness, it is proof of growth. Every time you hesitate yet still take the step, you reclaim ground. Every time you feel doubt but move anyway, you weaken the enemy. Every time you question the accuracy of the voice inside your mind, you shift the balance of power. Winning this war does not require dramatic breakthroughs. It requires awareness, recognizing when your mind is reacting to the past instead of the present. It requires courage, acting even when the voice inside you trembles. And it requires patience, because internal battles are not won through force, but through consistency. The silent war inside your mind is not one you escape, it is one you learn to navigate. And as you grow, the war becomes quieter, not because the world becomes easier, but because you become stronger than the stories that once controlled you. Breaking the chains you can't see, there are restraints in your life that you have never touched, never seen, and never consciously acknowledged. Yet they shape your behavior more than any physical barrier ever could. These chains are woven from past experiences, inherited beliefs, conditioned fears, and the silent conclusions you made about yourself long before you understood their weight. They don't clatter or rattle, so most people never realize they're carrying them. But their presence is revealed every time you stop yourself from doing something you know you're capable of. These chains often begin in childhood, during moments that felt insignificant at the time. A teacher who dismissed your question, a parent who misunderstood your intention, a group of peers who laughed at your mistake. You don't remember the details, but the emotional residue stays. Slowly, the mind begins forming rules. Don't stand out. Don't be wrong. Don't take risks. Don't expect too much. Don't disappoint. These rules become part of your internal operating system. You rarely question them because they masquerade as common sense. But in truth, they are restrictions, old chains disguised as wisdom. Imagine someone who grew up being told they are too sensitive, As an adult, they might silence their emotions even in moments when expression is healthy. They've learned to hide a natural part of themselves because the chain whispers, "Don't show too much," or "Consider someone who failed publicly once and never returned to that pursuit again." The original event lasted minutes. The chain it created may last decades. People often think they are avoiding situations because they're being practical, but usually they're avoiding the discomfort of revisiting an old wound. These invisible chains show up in countless ways. You tell yourself you're not ready, when the truth is you're afraid of being visible. You reject opportunities before they have a chance to form, because failure once felt unbearable. You stay in environments that no longer fit you because change feels unsafe. You believe you're protecting yourself, but what you're really protecting is the version of you that was hurt long ago. And the more you protect that version, the more power these chains gain. One of the strongest chains is the fear of disappointing someone who may not even be part of your life anymore. You carry their expectations like a shadow. Perhaps a parent who wanted stability led you to believe ambition is risky. Maybe a mentor who valued conformity taught you to blend in rather than stand out. These chains are subtle. They appear as responsibility, being realistic, or doing the right thing. But beneath those labels is a truth. You stopped choosing for yourself. Your choices became a reaction to someone else's fears. Another chain forms around identity. When you repeatedly act in a certain way, your mind begins to turn those actions into definitions. After enough repetition, "I made a mistake" becomes, "I'm someone who always fails." "I'm nervous today" becomes, "I'm not confident." The chain tightens each time you reinforce the identity without questioning it. What you call personality might actually be self-protection learned from old pain. These chains can even develop from success. If you once achieved something that impressed others, you may fear trying again because you're terrified of delivering anything less. In this case, the chain is perfectionism, a quiet, suffocating belief that anything less than flawless is failure. You chase impossible standards not to satisfy yourself, but to avoid the discomfort of not meeting expectations. And so the success that once lifted you becomes the chain that restrains you. Breaking these chains begins with awareness. You cannot free yourself from restraints you refuse to acknowledge. You must look inward with a level of honesty that feels uncomfortable. Ask yourself why certain decisions exhaust you before you even make them. Ask why you avoid certain conversations, opportunities, or risks. Trace the emotional response back to its source. You may find that many of your current limitations are tied to events that would no longer threaten you if they happened today. To break an invisible chain, you must challenge the belief that created it. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What if I try with who I am now, not who I was then?" Instead of saying, "This is just how I am," ask, "Who taught me to be this way?" Instead of assuming danger, consider possibility. What you fear may no longer exist anywhere except your memory. Breaking these chains also requires giving yourself permission to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow the person you had to be to survive earlier chapters of your life. You are allowed to release beliefs that once protected you but now limit you. You are allowed to rewrite the rules that guided your old identity. Sometimes, the simplest shift breaks the strongest chain, choosing to act in spite of the fear. Not ignoring the fear, not fighting it, but moving with it. Each time you do something your old self avoided, the chain weakens. Each time you challenge a limiting belief, the mental walls lose strength. Each time you refuse to shrink, the invisible restraints loosen. The chains you can't see are not permanent. They are psychological structures held together by repetition, memory, and emotion. When you choose new actions, new interpretations, and new responses, the structure has no choice but to crumble. The power these chains have over you is not in their strength, but in their invisibility. Once you see them clearly, they begin to break, not all at once, but piece by piece, choice by choice, moment by moment. And as these chains fall away, something remarkable happens. You realize you were never as restricted as you once believed. The limitations were real, but the walls were internal. The moment you see them, you gain the freedom to walk into a life that was waiting for you long before you were ready to claim it. The moment you decide who you become, there is a turning point in every life, though it rarely comes with fanfare. It does not arrive with fireworks, applause, or any dramatic shift in the world around you. Instead, it appears in a quiet instant, an internal pivot, when you finally confront the truth that your future is not determined by what you have been, but by what you choose next. This moment is subtle, but it is life-defining. It marks the divide between drifting and directing, between reacting to life and shaping it. Most people imagine transformation as a grand event, a lightning strike of clarity that suddenly resets the story. But real transformation begins far more quietly. It begins in the mind, often in a moment of discomfort, when you're tired of your own excuses, when you've outgrown your patterns, when you look at your life and realize you've been negotiating with fear for too long. In that instant, even before you act, something fundamental shifts. You stop identifying with the version of you that has been holding you back. Consider how often people wait for external permission to change. They wait for the perfect timing, the right opportunity, or someone to validate that the risk is worth taking. Yet the true pivot happens internally, long before any circumstance becomes favorable. You might be sitting on your bed at night, exhausted from another day of repeating the same behaviors you promised you'd outgrow. You might be staring at your reflection, asking quietly, "Is this really who I want to stay?" That internal question is the beginning of the decision. Some people reach this moment after hitting an emotional low, when staying the same becomes more painful than the discomfort of change. Others reach it during a moment of unexpected clarity, when they suddenly see that the person they could become is within reach, but only if they stop clinging to the person they've been. The trigger varies, but the outcome is the same: a conscious, deliberate choice to step into a new identity. This decision does not mean you instantly become stronger, wiser, or more capable. What changes is direction. Before the moment, you're pulled by your past. After the moment, you begin moving toward your future. This shift is subtle but profound. Every habit, every thought, every action begins to align with the identity you are choosing, not the identity you inherited from past experiences. Think of the countless examples throughout the world: the athlete recovering from injury who decides that the comeback is worth the risk, the entrepreneur who failed repeatedly but finally draws a line and says, "One more try," the student who has drifted for years but chooses discipline over avoidance. None of these decisions are visible from the outside, but internally they mark the moment when a person stops relying on motivation and starts relying on identity. Identity is powerful because humans act consistently with the person they believe they are. If you believe you are undisciplined, your actions follow that belief. If you believe you are resilient, your behavior aligns with that resilience. When you decide who you will become, you begin shaping a new internal narrative, one that guides your choices even when the process feels slow. This moment also requires confronting the truth that no one is coming to rescue you. Not a mentor, not a partner, not a miracle. The realization is both sobering and liberating. Sobering because you understand that the responsibility is yours. Liberating because if the path is yours, then the power is yours too. When you decide who you become, you reclaim authorship over a story you may have unconsciously handed to others long ago. Yet, deciding who you become also means letting go of versions of yourself you've grown attached to. Sometimes, the hardest part is releasing old identities. The responsible, one who never takes risks; the she, one who avoids attention; the overthinker, who never steps forward. These identities feel safe because they are familiar, but safety and growth rarely coexist. Choosing who you become requires courage, not the loud, heroic type, but the quiet courage to outgrow the identity that once protected you. Identity shifts also create friction. Friends may not understand the new boundaries you set. Colleagues may be surprised by your increased confidence. People in your life may subtly encourage you to stay predictable because your change forces them to confront their own stagnation. But this friction is proof of transformation. The moment you decide who you become, your environment begins rearranging itself around your new direction. From that point on, life often begins to respond differently. You notice opportunities you once ignored. You take actions you previously postponed. You recover faster from setbacks because the decision anchors you. The world outside doesn't necessarily change, but the way you interpret it does. Challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable because now they're not attacks on your identity. They're part of the journey toward the identity you've chosen. And perhaps the most important truth about this moment is this: it does not have to be dramatic to be powerful. It might be a quiet whisper inside you saying, "I'm done living beneath my potential." It might be a simple acknowledgement that fear will not be the deciding factor anymore. It might be the realization that you deserve a life that reflects your effort, not your doubts. Who you become is not determined by a single achievement, a single success, or a single breakthrough. It is determined by the moment you commit internally, and every moment after that, when you choose to honor that commitment, even in small, imperfect steps. The moment you decide who you become is the moment your life begins to shift from accidental to intentional. It is the moment the future stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you shape deliberately. And once you cross that threshold, you don't return to who you were, because you now know the truth becoming is a choice. And that choice is always yours. Rewriting the voice that sabotages you. From the moment you wake up, an inner voice begins to speak. It narrates, predicts, warns, criticizes, and interprets everything you experience. Sometimes it is supportive. Sometimes it is neutral. But often, without your permission, it becomes harsh, skeptical, and unforgiving. This voice does not shout, it whispers. But those whispers can shape your destiny more than any external noise ever will. Rewriting this inner voice is one of the most transformative shifts a human being can make, because the voice inside you becomes the atmosphere you live in every hour, every day. To understand how this voice gains its power, you must understand where it comes from. No one is born with a self-critical narrator. The voice forms slowly, through years of feedback from the world around you. A parent's frustration becomes, "Why can't you do anything right?" A teacher's impatience becomes, "You're not smart enough." A group of peers ignoring you becomes, "You don't belong." You don't consciously choose these messages. They slip past your defenses before you're old enough to question them, and your mind stores them as truth. Over time, these borrowed judgments become your inner dialogue. This internal voice also learns from emotional memories. If you failed publicly once, the voice remembers the discomfort and attempts to prevent you from feeling it again. If you were abandoned, it warns you not to get too close. If you were mocked, it convinces you to stay invisible. In its own twisted way, the voice believes it is protecting you. It's trying to shield you from repeated pain. But in doing so, it often builds a cage around your potential. The problem is not that you have an inner voice. Everyone does. The problem starts when you treat this voice as a leader instead of a messenger. The mind presents thoughts as commands even though they are simply reflexes. Reactions shaped by fear and memory, not by truth or accuracy. When the voice says, "You can't," what it really means is, "You haven't yet." When it says, "You're not capable," what it truly reflects is, "I'm trying to prevent you from risking discomfort." But because this voice sounds like you believe it without questioning it. Consider how many choices in your life this voice has influenced. The opportunities you didn't take, the boundaries you didn't set, the dreams you abandoned in early stages, not because you lacked ability, but because the voice created a narrative of limitation. This is how self-sabotage works. The inner voice becomes a storyteller that convinces you the smallest risk is a threat, the smallest challenge is a verdict, the smallest uncertainty is proof of inadequacy. One of the most powerful steps toward rewriting this voice is recognizing that thoughts are not facts. They are impulses, possibilities, guess predictions, sometimes helpful, sometimes deeply inaccurate. When you feel doubt rise in your mind, pause and ask, is this a memory speaking or a reality speaking? That question alone creates distance. And in that distance, you gain the ability to observe instead of obey. Rewriting this voice does not mean forcing positivity. Forced positivity is fragile and easily shattered. Instead, it means introducing accuracy. For example, when the voice says, "You always fail," accuracy says, "I've failed before, but I've also succeeded." When the voice says, "You're too behind to start," accuracy says, "Everyone starts somewhere, and I determine my pace." When the voice says, "People will judge you," accuracy says, "Some might, but their opinion is not my identity." The inner voice changes when you interrupt its old patterns. Every time you deliberately challenge it, you weaken the authority it once held. Every time you respond to it with logic instead of fear, you retrain your mind. This is psychological conditioning, repetition that rewrites internal scripts the same way exercise rewires muscles. A useful way to shift the voice is by changing the tone of your self-talk. Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. If a friend struggled, you would not say, "You're hopeless." If a child made a mistake, you would not say, "You always mess everything up." And yet people tell themselves these things daily. Rewriting the sabotaging voice begins by adopting a tone of support, not unrealistic praise, but compassion grounded in truth. Another important step is recognizing triggers. The sabotaging voice grows louder in familiar situations: vulnerability, uncertainty, risk, comparison. When you recognize the conditions that activate the voice, you can prepare for it instead of being blindsided. For instance, if you know you get self-critical after social interactions, remind yourself beforehand that your mind tends to exaggerate. If you know you get doubtful when starting new tasks, normalize the discomfort. When the voice appears, it won't feel like absolute truth. It will feel like an old pattern you are now aware of. Over time, as you challenge the inner voice, its tone begins to shift. It becomes less reactive and more reflective, less judgmental and more curious. It begins to guide rather than sabotage. Instead of attacking you, it starts questioning you constructively. What's the next step? What can you learn from this? How do you want to respond? This rewritten voice becomes an ally, not because it always tells you what you want to hear, but because it tells you what helps you grow. There's another layer to rewriting the inner voice, expanding the identity it speaks to. If you still see yourself as the person who failed years ago, your inner voice will talk to you like that person. If you see yourself as someone evolving, your voice will speak differently. Identity is fluid. The more you embrace growth, the more your inner voice updates its script. And perhaps the most profound part of this transformation is the realization that you do not have to silence the sabotaging voice to move forward. You simply have to stop letting it lead. When it whispers doubt, you keep moving. When it warns you of imaginary dangers, you choose the path anyway. When it questions your worth, you act with the belief that you are capable of learning whatever is required. Progress does not require a silent mind. It requires a mind you understand and no longer fear. Soon, the voice that once held you back becomes the voice that helps you rise. You rewrite it by interrupting, questioning, correcting, and replacing its old patterns. And with each new choice, you teach your mind a new way of speaking, a way that aligns with who you are becoming, not who you once were. The psychology of self-liberation. Liberation is not something that begins in your environment. It begins in your mind, long before any visible change happens in your external world. Self-liberation is the process of freeing yourself from internal barriers you didn't realize were shaping your life. It's the quiet dismantling of assumptions, fears, and inherited beliefs that have limited your choices, your voice, your confidence, and your sense of possibility. To understand this process, you must first understand how the human mind learns to confine itself in the first place. People often assume their limitations come from circumstances, but more often, limitations come from psychological habits, mental shortcuts formed during earlier experiences. When something painful happens, your mind tries to avoid that pain in the future. When something embarrassing happens, it tries to prevent another humiliation. When something threatens your sense of belonging or approval, your mind remembers the discomfort and builds protective walls. These walls are not physical. They're cognitive, they're emotional, they're behavioral, and because they are familiar, you often confuse them with personality. For example, someone who is criticized for being outspoken may learn to stay silent. Over time, they see themselves as quiet, even though silence was never their nature. It was a defense mechanism. Someone who struggled academically as a child may grow up believing they're not intelligent, even though the struggle was more about environment than ability. Someone who experienced rejection may assume they're unlovable, even though rejection often reflects another person's wounds, not their worth. These internal distortions become the foundation of your identity unless you confront them. Self-liberation begins with awareness, but not the vague kind. It demands precise, uncomfortable observation. You must examine the patterns you repeat without questioning, the way you downplay your achievements, the way you avoid conflict, the way you take blame too quickly or withhold your needs to avoid discomfort. These behaviors are not random. They are responses your mind learned to keep you safe. But what once protected you eventually becomes what confines you. One of the most important truths in psychology is this: the brain prioritizes safety over growth. Safety feels familiar, predictable, low risk. Growth feels uncertain, unfamiliar, and emotionally exposed. Even when growth is exactly what your life requires, your brain may resist it because change threatens the identity it knows. This is why self-liberation feels like an internal tug of war. One part of you wants expansion, another part wants protection, and the protected part often feels louder because it speaks the language of fear, an emotion the brain takes extremely seriously. To liberate yourself, you must learn to decode this fear, not to silence it, not to suppress it, but to understand it. Fear is often a messenger carrying outdated information. It warns you based on the past, not the present. A fear of speaking up may trace back to moments when your voice was mocked. A fear of failure may trace back to moments when your attempts were punished instead of encouraged. A fear of criticism may trace back to moments when approval felt essential for survival. Understanding these origins does not immediately dissolve the fear, but it removes its authority. Once you know where the fear comes from, you stop mistaking it for truth. A major element of self-liberation is reframing your identity. Most people spend their lives reacting to identities they did not consciously choose. I am shy. I am stubborn. I am emotional. I am unlucky. Identity often forms as a conclusion drawn from repeated experiences, not as an intentional decision. But identity is fluid, not fixed. Neuroscience shows that the brain remains adaptable throughout life, constantly creating and pruning neural pathways. This means you are never permanently locked into an identity. You are only locked into the stories you tell yourself about who you are. Liberation comes when you begin telling a different story. Not a delusional one, but an accurate one. One that acknowledges your strengths, your adaptability, your growth, and your capacity to evolve. When you shift the way you describe yourself, you shift the expectations your brain holds for your behavior. Behavior follows identity. When identity expands, possibility expands with it. Another principle in self-liberation is understanding emotional inheritance. People often carry beliefs that didn't originate within them. A parent who lived with scarcity might pass down fear around ambition. A family that valued compliance might discourage independence. A culture that punished vulnerability might teach you to hide your emotions. These external values slip into your psychology unnoticed. You accept them as normal, but liberation requires questioning. Does this belief serve my life today, or was it designed for someone else's survival in a different time and place? Letting go of inherited beliefs is not betrayal. It is evolution. You are not designed to repeat the emotional history of your family or community. You are designed to grow beyond it. At the core of self-liberation is responsibility, not the burdened kind but the empowering kind. Responsibility here means acknowledging that your mind is your territory. You cannot control your past, but you can control the meaning you assign to it. You cannot control other people's behavior, but you can control whether you internalize it. You cannot control every circumstance, but you can control whether you interpret challenges as evidence of limitation or evidence of growth. Responsibility does not mean fault. It means ownership. Ownership gives you power. When you accept that your internal world belongs to you, you gain the authority to redesign it. Self-liberation also requires accepting discomfort. Growth always involves destabilization. When you challenge old beliefs, your mind resists. When you set boundaries, people who benefited from your lack of them resist. When you speak your truth, situations built on silence begin to shake. Liberation is not comfortable, it is disruptive. But disruption is the natural process of becoming. As you move through this process, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Your mind becomes quieter. Old fears lose intensity. Old triggers lose their sharpness. Old insecurities become easier to observe without believing. The psychological walls that once confined you begin to crumble. And in their place, you build a more expansive mental environment, one shaped by intention rather than survival. Self-liberation does not happen in a single moment. It happens through repeated, small acts of courage. The courage to question old assumptions, to tolerate temporary discomfort, to challenge old identities, and to step into behaviors that once felt out of reach. Eventually, you reach a realization that changes everything. You were never trapped by your circumstances. You were trapped by the meaning you attached to them. And the moment you rewrite that meaning, the cage dissolves, not because the world changed, but because the walls inside you did. Standing unshaken in a world built to shake you, the world does not slow down to match your pace. It does not soften its edges to protect your confidence. It does not adjust itself so you can move without friction. Instead, life surrounds you with unpredictability, shifting expectations, sudden challenges, shifting relationships, pressures from society, and moments that test your composure in ways you never anticipated. To stand unshaken in such an environment is not an act of stubbornness, it is an act of mastery. Mastery over your inner world, your emotional reflexes, and your understanding of what you can and cannot control. From the moment you step into adulthood, life becomes a constant negotiation between external chaos and internal stability. And most people try to achieve stability by attempting to rearrange the outside world, changing circumstances, fixing others, seeking perfect conditions, avoiding all discomfort. But no matter how carefully you engineer your environment, the world remains volatile. Plans fall apart. People misunderstand you. Opportunities slip away. Unexpected disruptions appear without warning. This is not a sign that life is unfair. It is a sign that life is dynamic. Standing unshaken does not mean expecting a calm world. It means developing a calm internal center strong enough to withstand a turbulent one. Think about someone you admire, an athlete, a leader, a parent, a mentor, who remains composed while others crumble under pressure. Their power doesn't come from the absence of fear or stress. Their power comes from the discipline of responding rather than reacting. They understand that emotional stability is not a gift, it is a practice. This practice begins with clarity about what you can control. You cannot control someone else's opinions, but you can control how much you internalize them. You cannot control the pace at which opportunities arrive, but you can control how prepared you are when they do. You cannot control when a crisis hits, but you can control your level of panic, your breathing, and your ability to think clearly. Strength comes from focusing your energy inward, toward your responses, your decisions, your principles. Without this clarity, the world will shake you endlessly. Every disagreement will feel like a personal attack. Every setback will feel like a final verdict. Every unexpected event will feel like a threat to your stability. You will live in a constant state of emotional turbulence, not because life is cruel, but because your inner footing has not yet been established. Standing unshaken also requires emotional intelligence, especially the intelligence to recognize your own triggers. Everyone has emotional fault lines shaped by past experiences. Some people are triggered by criticism because it echoes old wounds of inadequacy. Some freeze under pressure because they were once punished for mistakes. Some overreact to conflict because confrontation once felt unsafe. These emotional reflexes do not make you weak, they make you human. But if you never understand them, they will control you. When situations shake you, pause. Observe the reflex instead of becoming it. Ask yourself, is this reaction coming from the present moment, or from something old that this moment resembles? That simple separation can prevent impulsive decisions, emotional spirals, and unnecessary self-blame. Awareness turns chaos into information, and information turns turbulence into clarity. Another key to standing unshaken is grounding, anchoring yourself in values that do not shift with circumstances. When you know what matters to you, integrity, growth, discipline, honesty, service, resilience, you cannot be swayed easily by temporary emotions or external pressures. Values act like pillars holding the structure of your life steady. Even when storms come, the pillars keep you upright. Without them, you collapse into whatever emotion dominates the moment. True stability also comes from learning how to maintain inner silence when the world is loud. Noise is everywhere. Opinions, judgments, comparisons, demands, distractions. The mind becomes overwhelmed not because it is weak, but because it is overstimulated. To stand unshaken, you must cultivate mental quiet, not by escaping the world, but by creating internal space where reflection outweighs reaction. This silence allows you to see situations more clearly. You notice what truly matters, what doesn't, what needs action, and what requires patience. You realize that not every discomfort is a threat, not every challenge is a crisis, and not every disagreement is a sign of failure. Silence sharpens perception. Standing unshaken also means understanding the reality of uncertainty. Many people crumble when they lose control because they treat uncertainty as danger. But uncertainty is the natural state of life. Everything you value, love, opportunity, growth, purpose, requires uncertainty. Without uncertainty, you would never change, never expand, never discover your capabilities. To stand unshaken, you must stop treating uncertainty as a threat and start seeing it as the landscape where strength is built. People who remain stable during uncertainty do something different from others. They trust themselves. Not blindly, not arrogantly, but consistently. They trust their ability to adapt, to learn, to recover, to adjust course when needed. They know they may not control the problem, but they control their resilience. And resilience often matters more than prediction. There will be moments in life when the ground beneath you shifts, losing a job, ending a relationship, facing illness, confronting unexpected news. In these moments, stability does not come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from accepting the reality, grounding yourself in your principles, and taking deliberate steps rather than emotional swings. Stability is built through incremental choices. Standing unshaken also means protecting your inner world. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every comment deserves emotional investment. Not every conflict deserves a reaction. Part of inner strength is choosing what you respond to and what you release. This selective engagement preserves your energy for the things that truly matter. As you grow in this ability, you begin to realize something powerful. The world doesn't necessarily become easier, but you become stronger. Events that once destabilized you now feel manageable. Opinions that once pierced you now pass through without impact. Challenges that once overwhelmed you now become opportunities for strategic action. This is not numbness. This is maturity. Standing unshaken does not mean you feel nothing. It means you feel everything without losing yourself. It is the ability to remain centered when life tilts. The ability to stand firm in your identity when the world pressures you to shift. The ability to stay grounded in truth when fear tries to distort your perception. The ability to stay composed when circumstances attempt to provoke chaos. And in time, you discover something extraordinary. When you stop being shaken by the world, you begin shaping the world around you. Your stability becomes influence. Your clarity becomes guidance. Your presence becomes reassurance. Your inner strength becomes a force that silently recalibrates your environment. You stand unshaken not because life is gentle, but because you have built a foundation that no storm can reach. When fear lies and courage whispers, fear is one of the most persuasive storytellers in the human mind. It speaks with authority, with urgency, with a tone that feels like truth. But the stories it tells are rarely accurate. Fear exaggerates, distorts, and dramatizes. It magnifies small risks into imagined catastrophes. It turns uncertainty into danger, possibility into threat, and discomfort into doom. And because fear speaks loudly, most people mistake volume for truth. Courage, on the other hand, does not shout. It rarely demands attention. It whispers, quiet, steady, almost easy to overlook. But that whisper often carries more accuracy than fear ever will. Understanding this contrast is the foundation of navigating life with clarity instead of paralysis. Fear comes from the oldest part of your brain, the part designed for survival. Its job is to keep you alive, not fulfilled. It reacts to unfamiliar situations the same way it reacts to real danger, releasing the same biological alarm system. This is why your body tenses before you take a risk. This is why your heart races before a difficult conversation. This is why doubt floods your mind when you're about to attempt something new. Fear doesn't know the difference between emotional exposure and physical threat. It treats both as emergencies. But because fear reacts faster than logic, it often misinterprets opportunity as danger. A job interview becomes a threat. Expressing your opinion becomes a threat. Starting a project becomes a threat. Asking for what you want becomes a threat. Pursuing a dream becomes a threat. Fear is not lying intentionally. It simply doesn't understand that growth requires vulnerability. Courage understands this. Courage sees reality without the distortions of fear. It doesn't deny risk, but it places risk in perspective. Courage whispers, "You've handled challenges before." Courage whispers, "Discomfort is temporary." Courage whispers, "You are capable of learning as you go." Courage whispers, "Fear is not a stop sign." Courage whispers, "You're allowed to try." The difficult part is that fear arrives first loud and dramatic, while courage arrives later, quiet and calm. Most people let the first voice win simply because they hear it more clearly. But fear's volume is not evidence of truth. It is evidence of instinct. To understand fear's lies, you must examine the stories it tells. Fear says, if you fail, you will be humiliated. Reality says, failure is normal and forgettable. People remember less than you think. Courage whispers, failure is feedback, not your identity. A fear says, you're not ready yet. Reality says readiness comes from action, not waiting. Courage whispers, begin where you are. The fear says, others are judging you. Reality says most people are too focused on themselves to judge you deeply. Courage whispers, their thoughts are not your responsibility. Fear says, you'll lose control. Reality says growth requires stepping into uncertainty. Courage whispers, you can handle what happens. Fear exaggerates your weaknesses. Courage reminds you of your strengths. Fear warns of potential pain. Courage highlights potential growth. Fear imagines every worst-case scenario. Courage notices the best-case scenario and the dozens of neutral ones in between. Across the world, people who achieve remarkable things feel fear just as intensely as anyone else. The difference is that they don't let fear become their decision maker. They hear fear's warnings, but check them against courage's whispers. A scientist presenting years of research feels fear. A performer stepping on stage feels fear. A founder launching an idea feels fear. A person leaving a toxic relationship feels fear. None of these actions are fearless. They are courageous. Courage is not the elimination of fear. Courage is the ability to move forward while fear tells its stories. A powerful part of this transformation is learning the language of fear. Fear speaks in absolutes. Always. Never. Everyone. Impossible. Courage speaks in possibilities. Maybe. Let's see. Try. Learn. When you hear absolutes, you're hearing fear. When you hear options, you're hearing courage. Another way fear lies is through magnification. It makes small challenges feel massive. A simple task becomes overwhelming. A minor confrontation becomes unbearable. A small goal becomes unrealistic. When this happens, pause and ask yourself, what part of this is actually dangerous right now? Usually, the answer is nothing. The fear is about imagined consequences, not real ones. Courage corrects this distortion by focusing on the next step instead of the entire journey. Fear wants you to look at the mountain. Courage wants you to take the first step. Fear also lies by attaching your worth to outcomes. It tells you that if you fail, you are a failure. If you are rejected, you are unworthy. If you struggle, "You are not enough." Courage separates identity from outcomes. Courage whispers, "You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to try again. You are allowed to grow." Understanding this difference frees you from perfectionism, which is simply fear dressed as discipline. Another crucial part of standing up to fear's lies is building tolerance for discomfort. Discomfort is not danger, not even close. It is simply unfamiliar. But because the brain equates unfamiliarity with risk, discomfort often triggers fear. People avoid new experiences not because they lack ability, but because they mistake discomfort for a warning. Courage whispers, "Stay with it. It will feel familiar soon." Over time, something remarkable happens. Your brain stops treating growth like danger. The more you experience discomfort and survive it, the more your mind adapts. What once terrified you becomes manageable. What once seemed impossible becomes normal. What once felt overwhelming becomes routine. Fear becomes quieter, not because it disappears, but because you stop treating it like truth. Courage becomes louder, not because it changes its whisper, but because you finally learn to listen. And in this shift, your life expands, decisions become clearer, actions become easier, risks become manageable, opportunities become visible. You move not with the reckless confidence of someone who feels no fear, but with the grounded confidence of someone who understands fear and still chooses growth. Fear lies, courage whispers, and your future depends on which voice you choose to follow. The hidden power of radical self-responsibility. Radical self-responsibility is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal transformation. Many hear the phrase and assume it means taking blame for everything that goes wrong in their life. But responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is power. It is the recognition that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you have complete authority over how you interpret it, respond to it, and rise from it. This shift from external dependence to internal ownership quietly separates those who grow from those who remain stuck. Most people spend years believing that their outcomes are shaped primarily by circumstances. They think their success depends on luck, timing, background, or the behavior of others. They see life as something that happens to them rather than something that unfolds through them. As a result, they wait for conditions to improve, wait for approval, wait for motivation, wait for opportunities. Waiting becomes their identity, and while they wait, their potential waits with them. Radical self-responsibility dismantles this mindset. It tells you, with uncompromising clarity, that your life is ultimately shaped by your decisions, not your conditions. Not because conditions don't matter, but because conditions will never stop changing, while your decisions remain the one constant you can shape. The reason radical responsibility feels difficult is that it exposes two truths most people would rather avoid. First, that you are capable of more than you've been living. Second, that you are the one who must initiate the change. This can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes the psychological refuge of excuses. When you stop blaming your past, your parents, your relationships, your circumstances, or your current environment, there is no one left to hold accountable except yourself. And in that moment, everything becomes clear. Growth becomes possible. Direction becomes visible. The fog of helplessness begins to lift. Radical responsibility begins by examining the areas of life where you've unconsciously surrendered control. Perhaps you say, "I can't pursue my goal because no one supports me." But responsibility asks, "Can you take the first step without support?" Or you say, "I react this way because that person triggers me." Responsibility asks, "Why does their behavior control your emotional state?" Or you say, "I don't have time to improve myself." Responsibility asks, "Who manages your time if not you?" These questions are not meant to shame. They are meant to liberate. Because the moment you realize you have agency, you also realize you have pathways. You shift from being a victim of circumstance to an architect of direction. Across every culture and every generation, people who change their lives dramatically share a common trait. They stop outsourcing their power. They stop waiting for ideal conditions. They stop making decisions based on fear or convenience. They stop expecting others to pave the way. They become internally driven rather than externally dependent. Radical responsibility also involves emotional accountability, understanding that while you cannot always control what you feel, you can control how you act on those feelings. Anger is not the problem, uncontrolled reaction is. Fear is not the problem, paralysis is. Sadness is not the problem, self-neglect is. Responsibility means owning your emotional experience without letting it dictate your life. This shift is especially important in relationships. When you adopt radical responsibility, you stop expecting others to read your mind, fix your insecurities, or validate your worth. You stop blaming them for dissatisfaction that originates within you. Communication becomes clearer. Boundaries become stronger. Expectations become healthier. You begin to engage with others from completeness, not from neediness. The hidden power in this mindset is that it transforms your identity. When you take responsibility consistently, you start seeing yourself as someone capable, reliable, and self-directed. You trust yourself more. You depend on yourself more. You become the person you turn to first, not the last. This internal trust is what confidence is made of, not arrogance, but the quiet assurance that you can handle your life. Radical responsibility also changes your relationship with challenges. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What can I do with this?" Challenges stop feeling like punishments and start feeling like training. You become less reactive, more adaptable, and more strategic. You stop collapsing under pressure because you understand that pressure is part of the process of becoming stronger. Another profound benefit is the way this mindset eliminates excuses, those subtle, comforting narratives that protect your ego while sabotaging your future. Excuses lose their power when you embrace responsibility. You no longer say, "I didn't succeed because of them." You say, "I didn't succeed because I didn't adjust my approach yet." The word "yet" becomes the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. Radical responsibility also means taking ownership of your time. Time is the most democratic resource. Everyone receives the same amount each day. But the difference between stagnation and progress is not time itself, but how you allocate it. Once you take responsibility for your schedule, you stop saying, "I don't have time," and start saying, "I didn't prioritize it." And priorities can be reshaped at any moment by choice. One of the quietest superpowers of this mindset is that it stops you from chasing external validation. When responsibility is internal, approval becomes optional. Praise becomes pleasant but not necessary. Criticism becomes information rather than injury. You stop bending to fit expectations. You stop living in reaction to others. You grow into yourself without seeking permission. Ultimately, radical responsibility is not about perfection or control. It's about empowerment. It's the understanding that your mind, your choices, your habits, your reactions, and your future belong to you. And when you claim ownership, you stop living at the mercy of life and start living in partnership with it. When you embrace this mindset, the world does not suddenly become easier, but you become stronger, wiser, and far more capable of shaping a life that reflects your potential rather than your fears. This is the hidden power of radical self-responsibility. It turns the direction of your life into a conscious creation, not an accidental outcome. Becoming the architect of your inner world, your mind is not just a place where thoughts appear. It is a landscape, dynamic, fertile, and endlessly shaped by the meanings you assign to your experiences. Most people never realize this. They walk through life as visitors inside their own minds, reacting to whatever thoughts arise, accepting whatever beliefs they inherited, and allowing emotions to steer them without question. But becoming the architect of your inner world means something entirely different. It means shifting from passenger to creator, from unconscious patterns to intentional design. It means recognizing that the quality of your inner environment determines the quality of your life, long before any external achievement does. Architecture begins with awareness. You cannot design what you do not see. Most people carry mental clutter they've never examined. Old conclusions, unchallenged fears, outdated beliefs, and habits picked up from environments they've long outgrown. These internal structures become like walls built by someone else. You may live inside them for years without realizing you have the authority to redesign the entire space. To become the architect, you must first observe what currently exists. Notice the thoughts that show up when you wake in the morning. Notice the narratives your mind tells during stress. Notice how you interpret uncertainty. Do you see possibility or threat? Notice how you speak to yourself in private moments. These observations are blueprints. They reveal which areas need renovation. Once you begin examining your internal architecture, you'll discover something powerful. Much of your inner world was not built by you. It was shaped by parents, culture, peers, early experiences, society's expectations, and your own attempts to survive difficult moments. And while these influences were often unintentional, they left permanent structures, beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible, and how much you can hope for. But the moment you see these structures clearly, you gain permission to remodel them. Architects do not accept every structure as permanent. They evaluate, question, remove, rebuild, and redesign. You must do the same with your mind. Start with beliefs. Beliefs are the foundational pillars of your inner world. If a pillar is distorted, I'm not good enough. I always fail. People will judge me. Nothing works out for me. The entire structure of your thoughts becomes unstable. These beliefs often go unnoticed because they operate in the background, influencing your behavior quietly. But when you question them, where did this belief come from? Who taught me this? Does evidence support it? Does it serve my growth? You weaken their authority. Architects do not simply demolish old structures, they replace them with better ones. Replacing a belief does not require blind positivity, it requires accuracy. For example, the belief, I always fail, can be replaced with, I have failed before, but I have also succeeded, or failure is part of learning. These are not fantasies, they are truths. And truth is a far stronger foundation than fear. Another key element of inner architecture is emotional regulation. Emotions are weather patterns inside your mind. They can storm, they can calm, they can shift in seconds. You cannot control the weather, but you can build structures that withstand it. To become the architect is to learn how to create mental spaces where emotions can be felt without destroying your stability. This does not mean suppressing emotions. Suppression is like sealing cracks with tape. It may hold for a moment, but eventually everything breaks. Emotional architecture is about creating space, allowing the emotion to be present, observing it objectively, and letting it pass without letting it dictate your identity. People who master this skill remain grounded even during internal storms. They feel deeply, but they don't drown. Another part of inner architecture is the way you filter external information. When you don't filter, everyone else becomes an architect in your mind. Someone criticizes you, and their words reshape your confidence. Someone doubts you, and their opinion becomes your limitation. Someone judges you, and their perception becomes your identity. You lose control over your inner blueprint. Architects install strong filters. They decide what enters and what does not. You must do the same. Ask, is this thought mine or borrowed? Ask, does this opinion align with my truth? Ask, does this information help me grow, or does it shrink me? You become the protector of your mental space. A powerful part of designing your inner world is intentionally choosing what you focus on. Attention is the tool that constructs your mental structures. Whatever you repeatedly focus on becomes magnified, reinforced, and solidified. If you focus on fear, your inner world becomes a fortress of limitations. If you focus on growth, your inner world becomes a landscape of opportunity. Focus is not accidental, it is chosen, and each choice shapes the architecture. Another core element is habits. Mental habits are like repeated structural patterns. Consistent thoughts, consistent behaviors, consistent interpretations. If your habits are reactive, chaotic, and fear-driven, your inner world becomes fragile. If your habits are intentional, disciplined, and future-oriented, your inner world becomes resilient. To build mental resilience, create habits that stabilize your inner environment. Habits of reflection so you understand yourself. Habits of self-talk so your mind receives clarity. Habits of boundary setting so your emotional space stays protected. habits of small daily discipline, so your identity shifts through consistency. Each habit is a brick. Each day you place another one. Identity is the crown of your inner architecture. Identity determines how you show up in the world, how you respond to adversity, what you believe you're capable of, and where you draw your boundaries. Identity is not discovered, it is constructed. And when you take responsibility for constructing it, you gain the power to redefine your entire life. Becoming the architect means no longer asking, "Who am I?" Instead you ask, "Who do I choose to become?" And then you build your inner world to align with that choice. Over time, your inner world becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield, a place of clarity rather than confusion, a place of strength rather than insecurity, a place designed by intention, not shaped by accident. And when your inner architecture is strong, something remarkable happens. The chaos outside no longer determines the peace inside. The world can shake, but you do not collapse. Life can change, but you do not lose yourself. Challenges can rise, but you face them with stability, because you are no longer a visitor in your own mind. You are the architect, designing, strengthening, refining, and building a life from the inside out. The unfeet life, reclaiming your power for good. The unfecked life is not a fantasy version of existence where everything goes right. It is not about perfection, constant positivity, or magically eliminating all adversity. The unfecked life is something far more real and far more powerful. It is a life where you are no longer controlled by the emotional debris of your past, the limiting beliefs you absorbed unconsciously, or the fears that once dictated your decisions. It is a life built from clarity, responsibility, calm strength, and deliberate action. It is the life you create when you reclaim the power you once gave away. Reclaiming your power begins with one truth. Your inner world drives your outer world. The way you think, interpret, and respond to life shapes every experience you have. When your inner world is chaotic, you live in reaction, reacting to circumstances, reacting to people, reacting to your own emotions. But when your inner world is steady, you live with intention. You choose your responses. You choose your direction. You choose your identity. This shift from reaction to intention is the root of becoming unfazed. To reclaim your power, you must first understand how you lost it. Power slips away in subtle ways. When you let others define your worth, when you silence your needs to avoid discomfort, when you shrink yourself to maintain peace, when you prioritize approval over authenticity. It slips away when you allow old wounds to speak louder than your current capabilities. It slips away when you let fear decide your future. None of this happens overnight. It happens slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize you've been living beneath your potential without even noticing. Reclaiming your power requires reversing this process with conscious intention. The first step is ownership. Ownership means recognizing that your choices, your reactions, your boundaries, and your habits belong to you. It means understanding that no matter what happened before, your future is under your jurisdiction. Ownership is empowering because it brings the locus of control back to where it belongs, within you. When you stop blaming circumstances and start directing yourself, you step into the driver's seat of your life. The next step is clarity. Specifically, clarity about who you want to become. An unfecked life is not built from vague wishes or general desires. It is built from specific identity. Who do you choose to be when challenges arise? Who do you choose to be when you face fear? Who do you choose to be when temptation pulls you toward old habits? When identity is clear, decisions become easier. When identity is vague, decisions become emotional and inconsistent. Clarity also means defining your non-negotiables, the standards you refuse to drop, even when it's uncomfortable. Non-negotiables are the backbone of an unfecked life. They protect your energy, your time, your focus, and your emotional stability. They tell the world who you are and what you will accept. Without non-negotiables, you live according to other people's expectations. With them, you live according to your own design. Reclaiming your power also requires confronting the patterns that once sabotaged you. Every person has patterns, emotional habits, thinking habits, behavioral loops. Maybe you shut down when criticized. Maybe you over-explain yourself to avoid conflict. Maybe you procrastinate because pursuing your goals triggers fear. These patterns were formed to protect you, but now they restrict you. Breaking them is not a matter of willpower alone, it is a process of awareness, substitution, repetition, and emotional maturity. Then comes the discipline to follow through. The unfad life is not built in a moment of inspiration, it is built through consistent choices. Discipline is not punishment, it is self-respect in action. It is the decision to honor your future self over your temporary impulses. It is choosing growth over comfort, intention over impulse, and action over avoidance. Discipline creates progress. Progress creates identity. Identity creates stability. A major part of reclaiming your power is strengthening your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They protect your emotional space from the people, environments, and demands that drain you. Strong boundaries allow you to preserve energy for what matters. Weak boundaries force you to constantly repair damage. When you establish clear boundaries, you stop leaking power into places that do not serve you. Another crucial element is emotional neutrality. Being unfreaked does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being controlled by feelings. You learn to experience emotions without becoming them. You learn to pause before reacting. You learn to let discomfort pass instead of building your identity around it. Emotional neutrality gives you clarity during chaos. It stops temporary emotions from creating permanent consequences. As you reclaim your power, you begin to realize something extraordinary. Your external life starts rearranging itself around your new internal state. Opportunities appear because you now recognize them. Relationships improve because you communicate from strength, not insecurity. Challenges feel smaller because you face them as a grounded, capable individual. Your life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes aligned, and this alignment produces confidence, not the loud, performative kind, but the deep, steady kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. This kind of confidence is unshakable because it is built from evidence. Evidence that you can set boundaries, follow through, regulate your emotions, choose your direction, and rise from difficulty. When you trust yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You stop craving permission. You stop fearing opinions. You live from internal certainty. Over time, the unfkid life becomes a natural state, not because your environment becomes easier, but because you become wiser, calmer, and more resilient. You stop engaging in battles that drain you. You stop negotiating with your self-worth. You stop abandoning yourself to please others. You start building, choosing, leading, and expanding. Reclaiming your power for good means making self-respect your default, clarity your compass, boundaries your armor, discipline your engine, and responsibility your foundation. It means living a life that reflects your potential rather than your fears. The unfid life is not a destination, it is a transformation. It begins when you decide that your future will be shaped by intention, not by history. It becomes real when you choose to rise every time you are tempted to shrink. And it lasts for good when you build a life from strength rather than survival. This is the unfeed life, a life where you own yourself so fully that nothing, no person, no situation, no fear, can take that power away again. Thank you for walking through this journey of clarity, responsibility, and inner liberation. UNFEC Yourself, presented by Assets Investor, was never meant to give you a new version of perfection. It was meant to reveal the strength, intelligence, and resilience that were already inside you, waiting for space to rise. As you close this audiobook, remember that transformation is not a moment. It's a decision you remake every day. The voice inside you will still speak, challenges will still appear, and life will still test your footing. But now, you carry a different kind of awareness, one that lets you stand steady, choose deliberately, and move forward without surrendering your power. You are no longer reacting to the world, you are shaping your place in it. You are no longer confined by old stories. You are writing your own. And you are no longer held by invisible limits. You are free to rise fully, calmly, and intentionally. Thank you for listening, for showing up for yourself, and for allowing Assets Investor to guide you through this experience. Your unfcud life begins now, quietly, confidently, and entirely in your hands.